Hey all, welcome back to the art room. Okay, time to shade. Get those pencils, pencil sharpeners, homemade blending stump if you need, or if you got access to Q-tips and tissues, awesome. Hey, you got even fancier drawing materials at home. You got things like chamois cloths and tortillions and whatnot. Awesome. Use what you got. It's all gonna work. Okay, so, again, wow, oops. I totally forgot to put in the little shadow markers for where the grooves in the teeth are. So after I completed the teeth, I just went back and I sketched in where those were. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so to get started, actually, I want to loosen up and I want to use some, throwing pencils, want to use some heavy pressure. So I'm actually going to begin by going for some of my darkest value areas, those negative spaces that will really help me to kind of figure out my value range, right? These are some, you can even see that these are darker than my cast shadow. Okay, so I want to really get into some heavy shading right off the bat, really warm up. Okay, so I'm going to look for those darkest value areas on my picture. I'm going to use really firm pencil pressure, and we're going to start getting those in. And as I'm shading, I'm just going to kind of follow my contour outline. Again, I'm going to continue to be a really good observer and correct any errors I see happening in my contour outline. Right? Won't be the first, won't be the last as I go. So just kind of, paying close attention to where I see those darkest values. Now at this point too, you may want to grab a little bit of a shade guard. As working, I've just got a scrap of envelope I'm working off of here. Okay, so as we're shading, you don't want to be smudging as you go. Now this isn't totally solid dark. Actually, as this nose cavity kind of comes more into a light area, it does lighten up a bit. So I'm going to modulate my pressure ever so slightly on the inside of the nose cavity where it's really, really dark, where we go further into the cavity. And then it does lighten up to kind of like a dark middle as we come out of the cavity. Oh, that's my cat sneezing. And a little smudge. Okay. Again, just filling in those darkest value areas, really warming up that pressure, giving ourselves a good feel for the value range we can create with our pencil. Good, do a little smudge. Okay, and then finally, this last section here, really, really dark value. All right, and as you're shading, sorry, that's my husband coming down the stairs. Babe, just too late. You're making the noise. Come down the stairs. All right. Really establish those dark values. Okay, and blend. I'm going to pause here for a minute, resharpen my pencils, and I'll meet you right back. Ooh, there we go. Sharpened pencil. Yeah, when you're doing heavy pressure, man, you really do blitz through the pencil like you wouldn't believe. Okay, darkest values established. So I'm just going to start working kind of front side of the skull to the back, kind of top, down, and around. And I'm just focusing on value shapes that I see. right? Form shadow on the object, right? That's what form shadow is. So I'm looking at shapes like these, right? Shapes like these, so darker, kind of middle light, and that's what's going to create that illusion that this is really three-dimensional, how accurately I'm able to capture those. Okay, so I rest my hand on my shading guard here, a little scrap envelope, and I'm going to start shading. So kind of a middle dark pressure here. Sorry, I'm going to pause for a second, folks. Ooh, sorry again, folks. The joys of working from home. Mike needs some help getting stuff out the door. Okay. Here we go again. So continuing on with our kind of middle dark shadow shape here. Just bringing, and I'm just, where it's darker, you're pressing harder. Where it's a little bit more of a lighter, middle value, you're pressing lighter. And I'm just modulating that pencil pressure as I, kind of move around the drawing and observe the value shapes I see. Again, if you're working with mechanical pencil, gonna be fine. You need to work a little bit harder at the blending part of it, and controlling your pencil pressure so that you get kind of those smooth, graduated transitions. You just gotta work that pencil a little bit more, if you get what I'm saying. Now, if you're working with regular old number 2, that's great, because the graphite just kind of like smooches off. Okay. And a little blend. Just observing the shape of the form shadow. And kind of those transitions in tone. Okay, now underneath the brow bone here, you have some pretty distinct shadows. Now, yes, I know there are those lines on the skull which show where like the plates of the skull have fused, the plates of bone have fused. We will get to those. We're going to save those for one of those last details we put in. And bringing the shadow down and under the brow bone here. Connects up lightly to kind of a little bit of a middle value shape coming down this way. And then it's a fairly light value that comes across that brow bone there. Again, take your time, be a really good observer. Of the shadow shapes you see. And then to put this light value in, I actually like to use like the dirty end of a Q-tip. And also, if you don't have a fancy kneaded eraser, no worries. Just using light pressure on your pencil eraser will help to lift some of that value up. Okay. So now we're going to come down around the side of the. Actually, let's continue on over to this edge of the skull for a moment. We'll do a little bit more work over this direction and then kind of work our way down. So let's start putting in some of those more middle values at the top of the skull. You can see what I'm observing here. Really lighten up on the pressure where it starts to get some of those lighter values, where the top of the skull is getting a little bit more light in the photograph. Okay, and then working my way down and around. And you get the basic idea, right? We're observing where we see those dark, middle, and light value shapes. You're observing that transition from, light value to dark value. And you just gotta you take your time with it. Now remember, no outlining. Outlining is the only illegal part of shading on this. Okay, we don't want to outline because that will just flatten all of our gorgeous shading work. That will just take all the three-dimensional fit and feel you got from this and just flatten it out. Right? There are times in design work and art and drawing where outlining's great, right? We want that kind of flat, graphic, cartoony look. In the case of this draw along, we're really trying to create the illusion of three-dimensional form. So this would be a case where outlining really wouldn't help us. If something's not showing up well, we need to adjust our value, not outline it. Okay, you get the general gist. I'm going to continue on with some shading work. I'm going to complete about this section of the face. Then we're going to do some focus work around the teeth. Okay, so continue shading. I'm going to pause the video here. In the next section that picks up, you'll see most of this with some shading filled in, and then we're going to get to those teeth. We'll talk about how to tackle them. All right, continue on. See you in a second. All right, and I'm back after doing a bit of shading work here. Okay, so you can see that I've just been looking at my light. I'm going to just hold it at an angle, right? Because when I hold it flat, sometimes I get that really weird glare from the kitchen light. So a little bit of an angle, it shows up a little better. So you can see I've been focusing on dark, middle, light value, just like I started at the forehead, except I've brought it down the front of the face. Okay, so now let's kind of start working with some of these teeth. Okay, and I'm going to show you a couple teeth. Once again, I'll pause. I'll move around to the bottom of the jaw. Okay, we'll finish off the skull and then tackle backgrounds. But again, for now, let's work towards those teeth. So what's tricky about the teeth is, once again, they aren't flat. Just like anything else in here, right? They actually have volume to them. And so we do have to do some shading work where we have dark values in around the edge of the teeth, where the teeth kind of curve away, right? Like curve away, like cup and curve away from the light. So we have shadow there, but then on the front of the teeth, we have those areas of lighter value. Now what I want you to try to not do is just outline the teeth. I want you to still really look for shadow shapes where you see dark, middle, and light value on the teeth, and that's what actually creates the form that you see there. All right, so as I work my way around, I'm just looking for where I see the dark value on the tooth, the middle value, and then the light. And then these guys, as they move further away from us in the light, we really do have just kind of most dark and middle value. And particularly as it goes right off the edge there, This last bit just kind of has the darker bit. There we go. Okay, and coming around the front of these teeth here, some up over here has some real dark at the edge, kind of more of a middle shadow on the side, and then same thing from the top, and really that center, the lower section is what captures the most light. Now these teeth, as we move towards the lighter side, these do tend to, you know, have more of that light value as well. And yes, it does get dark in between the teeth, but it's not just a harsh outline. They are shadows. They are shadows you see happening on those teeth. And also I assume some like faux painting and stuff in there, which is to kind of give it a more realistic look. Okay, and then a little bit of shadow at the top edges here, and then on this one, kind of middle value around the edge of the tooth there, and that gets really dark under that edge. A little bit here. There we go, and that's gives you more of the tooth look. I'm going to create a detailed blender here by picking off some of that cotton again, like I did in our last draw along, and creating just a smaller blender. Cool. And just give a little blend to some of these guys. Go back with my eraser where the tooth does stay like really light towards the center, and just touch that back up. And then I'm going to come down to the lower teeth as well and tackle a little bit of this jawbone here. Okay, so same thing at the bottom teeth. Just going to kind of start somewhere in the middle, kind of come down from that center point. And the lower teeth, now we do have some of these bigger shadow spaces kind of in between the lower teeth. Particularly the lower teeth are catching a lot less light. They're more in the shadow, kind of darker value range. Right, particularly as this side curves away from the lighter areas. Again, I'm just working with my pencil pressure. Firmer pressure is going to get you a darker value. And lighter pressure is going to get those lighter values as you continue to shade. And that's really all I'm looking for, is just on the teeth, right where I see those dark, middle, and light values. Particularly the lower teeth, I'm noticing a lot more of kind of middle value and darker value versus any real light areas. And in between the teeth, there's this really kind of like, I don't know, heavy painting or distressing or something like that. Faux painting on our skull. It's giving those really deep shadows and definitely more middle value on the teeth themselves. I always like to say too, like avoid chiclet teeth. Right? The teeth have shape and volume themselves. And you want to try to capture as much of that detail as possible. Get my detail blender in and on that. Okay, and then this little part of the jaw, we've got the shadow here. Comes down into this little pocket. actually a little highlight at the end and edge. And now we're going to start shading into the jaw. That lower jaw area, I should say. And then as it comes around here, okay, that shadow's pretty well defined. And then it kind of comes down here. And I'm just paying attention to the shape that those form shadows have and their value, right? It's kind of like we're looking at like two different things. We're looking at first the shape that that form shadow has. But then also, in addition to it, we're really carefully observing its value, right? So how dark or how light it is. I'm just trying to capture some of that texture detail. Excellent. Okay, and then do a little blend. All right, and finally, I'm gonna break here in the video again for us to keep doing some more drawing. So I'm gonna try to keep our videos from being, you know, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours long. So I'm gonna pause here again. I'm gonna do some more drawing work, bring it up to around the jaw, finish off the back part of the skull, and then I think we'll tackle backgrounds. All right, take care. See you again in a minute. Okay, at this point, the shading work on our skull is pretty much done. I did forget one last, oh, here I'm like kind of tilted away from the light there. You can see it without the glare. I did forget one detail. Oh, all of these little skull fractures. So we are gonna treat those skull fractures predominantly as line, except for, dark line I should say, except for where we see these highlights happening and running along those fractures. I want you to pay close attention to where the line goes kind of thick and where the line goes kind of thin. Now, if you don't feel confident just drawing dark right away, no worries. Sketch kind of the path of the line in first, and then put it in dark. And there'll be areas where the line's really kind of thick and heavy, and areas where it kind of falls away. Now the other thing I want you to try to recreate, it's tricky because you do need kind of a sharp eraser edge for it. There we go. Okay. You can also use a piece of paper, almost like, whoops, dropping my sharpener there as an eraser shield. And you can get in on those edges and just add the little highlight to the edge of the bone too, where it, to the edge of that line where it pops out. That'll help to make it look more three-dimensional and less like just a flat line that you have happening on the skull. Okay, and so we see one that kind of comes out of the eye socket here, and also it's not all the same thickness line. There are areas where the line is really thick, and then areas where not so much, it gets a little bit thinner. These little fractures. Like here, this one gets thicker into the skull, thinner out there. The one down the front of the face. Okay, and then these ones where kind of the plates on the head are fusing together. So these I'm going to sketch lightly at first, just so I kind of figure out where I want them to be. And then that also helps me control like how thick or how thin to make the different fracture lines. This comes in. Right, and they're not all solid lines either. They're also not the same weight, right? Beyond just thick and thin, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say weight, they're not the same value beyond just thick and thin. Some of them are lighter in value, and then some of them are really heavy dark. So I want you to do some careful observation that way as well, as to where the lines kind of trail off. You stop being able to see them in full view, really heavy or really thick, and then where they also kind of fade out of our line of vision, because we want to have all those good details on our skull as well. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and add in. Now these ones, I'm not using as much pressure because they're kind of more, they're wider, but they're kind of more of a light gray. Of a light gray shadow shape. But then as they get into these areas and they have more contrast with the skull itself, let me sharpen my pencil, or with the kind of value of the bone itself. Sharpen my pencil here. There we go. They do have some more pronounced areas of dark. And by modulating how thick or how thin and how light and how dark these, fractures and plates coming together in the skull are, that's going to help to give you more of a look that they're like a groove in the skull as opposed to a flat line that just happens on top of it. So this isn't the moment to rush, just be like, oh, I just want to be done with the shading part. No, you want to really take your time. Okay, and then it gets kind of fine line here, and then it definitely gets wider. At this point becomes a bit of a thicker line. And kind of winds its way up. Okay, at this point, our skull drawing, the skull part of it is pretty much done. Pretty much done. But it's very floaty, right? It's going to need a background and some cast shadows. So I want you to join me in our final video segment. I've broken this one out as a separate piece to it beyond the shading, and we're going to finish up the background and cast shadow. So I'll see you in our next video. Thanks for watching.